Good morning. I have a question. Who owns your mind? Who owns your mind? I want you to stop and examine yourself for a second. Let that question sit with you. A young boy might say, sugar owns my mind. A person going through a breakup might say, my ex owns my mind. So who owns your mind? Is it fear, worry, anxiety? Is it stress? Because the battles that are fought in the mind are won in the heart. And whoever owns your mind owns you and steers the course of your life. Is it shame? Is it unworthiness? Is it anger? Is it regret? Perhaps what dominated my mind for a time was loneliness and trauma, experienced as a real lack of purpose and hope. Depression took hold and owned my mind. And trauma is this murder of the soul. We're going in heavy right from the beginning, so. It is an invasion. Trauma is an invasion of these demons that pull you back and over to the same situation, reliving it. It captures you when you don't expect it. It visits you when you're trying to sleep. It is an experience that becomes rooted in the heart and is played out over and over in the mind. That is why the battle is in the mind, but won in the heart. So who owns your mind? Now, some of you may not be experiencing drastic trauma today. It could be a level of depression, anxiety, or stress, or today might be a good day, and we definitely take those. But each and every human being will suffer. Whether you have a lot or whether you have a little, the world has something for each of us to go through. It could be you were bullied in school or abuse in marriage. It could be emotional neglect. It could be a physical accident that you've been through. It could be bitterness, a deal gone bad, or a betrayal from someone you trust. Whatever comes into your mind and occupies your day and does not allow you to function, that is trauma. Some of us keep ourselves so busy, we stay in a survival state, just one thing to the next, constantly distracted. We don't have time to be concerned with those thoughts. But when things settle down, when the external world comes to peace, that's when it shows up. Do you wonder why so many in modern society cannot make room for silence, for stillness? There must be something on in the background, some app to play with or message to respond to, constant distraction. For many of us, it's probably years since we actually felt bored. Then again, maybe some of you are bored right now. So, and maybe you're wondering, where's this thing going? So let's just get our bearings. We are in a 10-week series exploring the names of God. Last week, there's another Will. Hey, thank you so much for being the other Will in the place. We love you. It's a double Will Bill, if you will. So he spoke about Elohim, the first name for God, and he acts as the powerful creator in Genesis 1. Today we are looking at Jehovah-Shalom, the Lord our peace. A name, any kind of name that we're given, signifies something about a person. If you call me stupid and I believe it, in my heart it will rule my mind. It will become how I understand myself, the choices I make, what I expect of myself, and the life I live. So the names our parents speak about us often have the most impact on our identity. And as far as my parents go, they are just genuinely wonderful, brilliant kind of people that I want to aspire to be like. My mum passed away when I was younger, when I was a teenager, but her strong love, I still feel it in my heart. And my dad's wisdom and gentleness, well, I certainly have more to learn about that, but I certainly look up to him for that. Now, the point is, no parent gets it right completely. For years, my parents called me forgetful, because guess what? I forget things all the time. And it was probably very frustrating for them. But their reaction and name about me made me feel terrible about myself. And every time I forgot something, there was shame. Forgetful. My kind of remember your stuff instinct was a little lacking. But the forgetful name became an identity that was reinforced over and over in a way that became like this self-fulfilling prophecy that I couldn't escape. There was this person, there wasn't a person who was telling me, hey, Will, you're actually organized and responsible, and that's who you can be. Now, this isn't the worst thing someone can go through, but God, years later, started to heal me by showing me he always looks after me and helps, even if I forget something. And it honestly has changed my life. So, I'm going to tell you a story. Back in 2011, I was in Quito, Ecuador, on a short-term mission trip from my ministry school in California. And we took off and drove an hour north from Quito, the capital, to the equatorial line to some park there to be at the equator. And at this one particular landmark, I took off my bag so we could all get a group photo. And inside this bag was my passport. So we moved on, and it was a short time later, in horror, I realized I'd left my bag, and I ran back to get it. The bag and its contents were completely gone. And I ran to lost property after that, but no one had handed anything in. At this point, everyone was waiting on the bus, and the team leader told me, we got to go. They had waited as long as they could, so we left. And I vividly remember sitting there on the bus, driving away without my bag or passport, feeling utterly exhausted. Powerless to fix it, no idea what to do. My passport had my visa, to make things worse, to get back into America. Without it, I'd be flying back to the UK. So I started to think about what to do. I realized I had three options as I was sitting there on the bus driving back to Quito. My first option was I might need to stay here a bit longer in order to get a temporary passport. Could I live with that? That's my question. Well, I really liked the place, and I loved the people there. So yes, that would be good. Second, if I got a temporary passport, I wouldn't have a US visa. So I'd have to fly straight back to the UK. There wouldn't be enough time or money to get a new visa and fly back to the States so I could graduate. Could I live with that? Well, sure, it'd be sad not to graduate the year, but it'd been a really great experience that year, and I'd got a lot out of it, and I'd get to go home and see my family, and I really missed them at that time. So, yes, that could be good. Third, God could do a miracle and somehow return my passport to me. Well, that would be amazing. That would be the best case scenario. So I was so tired in that moment, I prayed, God, I'm exhausted. I can't handle this situation. I give this whole situation to you. Whatever happens, 1, 2, or 3, I trust you. And then I fell asleep on the coach. So when I woke up, I felt such a peace all over me. And I knew in my heart that God had heard my prayer. Whatever happened, he would look after me, so I trusted him. So it took about 2 days for us to get to the embassy because of other things in the schedule. And me and a translator, we showed up in the morning, and someone told us it wasn't open till the afternoon, and it just didn't really make sense to me, so we returned an hour later and found a completely different part of the building where the embassies were, and everything was open. So we waited to be seen, and at the station, didn't take long for us to be seen, the British consul, her name was Lucy, asked me my name. I told her William Law, and I gave them a color photocopy of my passport. She took it and looked very closely at the color photocopy, and she asked my name again. I was like, William Law. And then from under she actually walked away, and she looked confused when she walked away. And then she came back a few moments later, and I'm confused at this point because she's just left without saying what she was going to do. She sat down, and under the counter, she pulled up my passport, which I was like, what are you doing with my passport? She said, this really never happens. 1 hour before you came in, a woman called Natalia, she'd stopped by with a passport. She had found it on a bus, and because of work and children, she had only just gotten around to handing it into the passport to the British embassy about an hour before we'd come in. And my instant reaction was, who does that? I'd lost my passport an hour away from the embassy. Who is the kind of person that finds a passport on a bus, takes time out of their busy work and family life to go to a foreign embassy and hand in something someone else had lost? So I want to tell you, since that time, that really spoke to me that I worry about a lot less these days. Something is lost, God will look after me. I trust him, he's got my back. God's power made such an impact in my heart that that battle got won in my mind. Now, it's not a license for me to not check for my wallet, my keys, my phone when I go somewhere. I know it just means that that worry piece is taken care of, because I think, God will look after me, and I, need to learn how to look after my things. So when we come to know his peace in our lives, we do not need to worry. So I want to tell you why I told you that story and why we're doing this series. So it's through his name. God wants to reveal himself for us. God is not so vain that he needs a bunch of titles or honorifics to sound impressive. He is impressive. So his names are for us. He's saying, here's what you need to know about me. So the goal here is not a knowledge of a name, but the revelation of who God is for us. And by knowing that, we would come to understand who we are. Because if we know who we are because of who he is, we might act in that same nature. So Will, last week, shared on Elohim, the powerful creator, because that's what we see him doing in Genesis 1, creating and giving purpose to everything. And Will lives that message. He sees creativity as taking part in God's revealed nature. It's become a living message, a participation of God's nature and a way of worship in his everyday life. And that's what it means to be a Christian, to be living message of Christ wherever we go. If he is the God who brings order out of chaos, beauty from the void, and creates life and gives it purpose, then who will you be because of him? Will you organize and give purpose to your work? Will you elevate your work with beauty? Will you tell stories about how God is the redeemer of the broken? If he is a powerful creator, then how will you create something powerful? Because you're called to that, to the extent that you have seen him with your eyes and understood in your heart that he is the creator. So today, Jehovah-Shalom. But because the next 5 messages after today are all Jehovah joined with another adjective, we're actually going to cover Jehovah first. And because nothing is ever simple, we actually have to talk about Yahweh in relation to Jehovah, because they're all linked. So today you get 3 names for the price of 1. Right, so quick history lesson. Good luck, pay attention with me. It's going to get a little theological. We're going to get out of it as soon as we can. Okay, so in the Hebrew Bible, God is most often referred to not by Elohim, sorry, Will, nothing personal, but by his own personal name, which is spelled Yod-He-Vav-He, Yahweh. Those 4 letters are called the Tetragrammaton, which means the 4 letters. So we get this from Exodus 3, when Moses asks God, look, if I go to the Israelites and I say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? Then what shall I say to them? To which God replies, I am that I am. So you must say to the Israelites, I am sent me to you. And God said again to Moses, so you must say to the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance from generation to generation. So first God says, Eyeh Asher Eyeh, I am who I am. It is the first person singular form. Tenses are a little tricky in Hebrew, and in English you have to choose which tense you're going to go with. So it could be I am who I am, or I will be what I will be, or I am the one who is, or I am and I will continue to be. Those are your options. So the phrase conveys both God's self-existence and his ongoing faithfulness and presence. But then he says, Yahweh. And this is fascinating because God shifts from the first person to the third person in a strange way. And I'll read this now because this is where it gets weird. The phrase reads strangely because it's doing some Hebrew wordplay and appears to derive God's name from a third-person masculine and singular imperfect form of the causative stem of the Hebrew verb hayeh, meaning to be or to become. Got that? Okay, so which essentially means he causes to be. It's a proclamation of worship. This is who God is. He causes to be. So there is this whole world of meaning given here in God's name. The meaning carries both existence and agency, what will be, both for himself and for his people, expresses both his self-existent eternal being and his active faithful presence, the one who is in himself and brings all else into being, unchanging yet ever present. This is the eternal, revealed, personal name of God represented by Yahweh. It's wild. So you've got first person and third person. It's just wild. So we don't really know how ancient Israelites pronounced the name because, as you might have noticed, there aren't any vowels. The early Hebrew alphabet only had consonants. And at some point in the late biblical period, it became blasphemous for Jews to speak the holy name of God out loud. So to protect themselves from saying this holy name, they would instead say Adonai, my Lord, or Hashem, the name, instead of the divine name written on the page. And this tradition is continued to the present day, leaving the actual pronunciation of God's name forgotten to time. By the Middle Ages, Hebrew scribes added vowels to their writing system. So when it came to time to write Yahweh, they inserted the vowels from Adonai, the thing they were speaking out loud, in between the four letters of Yahweh, in a visual way to remind them to say Adonai instead of speaking God's holy name. Now, this created this hybrid word, which looks like Yehovah, but no one would ever say that. It was just a visual clue to say Adonai instead of the divine holy name. And an unfortunate side effect was anyone aware of this custom would now read the divine name as Jehovah. No Jewish person ever said this word. So, in the 16th century, William Tyndale published his English translation of the Bible, which featured Jehovah. And over the few decades, I's became J's and U's became V's, and Jehovah became the popular form to use in English Bibles. Jehovah has stayed in use by many Christians to this day, even though it's definitely not what the ancient Israelites called God. But essentially it means Jehovah. It's from the said word of Adonai, so we translate it as the Lord. And so if you look in your English Bibles, a lot of the translations will say the Lord, Lord in all capital letters, and that represents the divine name. So the Lord, capital letters, divine name. If you see Lord in lowercase, it means something like master. So they use the term the Lord because Jews would say Adonai, which means the Lord, and it's standing in for Yahweh. Hopefully that made sense. Yahweh is the eternal personal name given to Moses at the burning bush, which means he causes to be. End of section. Simple, right? So, instead of Jehovah-Shalom, we're going to talk about Yahweh-Shalom. Knowing what we know now, when we read in English, the Lord our peace, that's Jehovah-Shalom, we now know we're dealing with the divine name, so we can think of this as he causes peace to be. And let's look at where we first come across this in the Bible. Let's turn, if you have a Bible, turn to Judges 6 in your Bibles. If you don't have a Bible, it'll be on the screen when we start reading it. So, Book of Judges, it's weird. Just read it. It's a very strange book. Near the beginning is Gideon, and he's terrified of the people who are terrorizing Israel. So I'll give you a little summary of the story. He's so scared that he takes his wheat to the winepress to hide it from them. But God sends an angel and greets him, not as he is, but as who he will become. And the messenger says, Yahweh is with you, you mighty warrior. And Gideon says, I need a sign. And the angel of Yahweh, I kid you not, lights his lunch on fire with a magic wand from his staff. And then it just disappears. Gideon realizes, oh no, that was God. And he's terrified he might die. Then God says to him, peace be with you, you won't die. So Gideon, right there, builds an altar, realizing he's met God. He does what Moses did before him and Abraham did before him, and he builds an altar and he names it Yahweh-Shalom, he causes peace to be. And that's the story. So we're going to read it together. And I'm going to be reading from a translation called the Lexham English Bible, which is a good study Bible for highlighting the names of God. Not necessarily one you'd read for ease of use with the language, but it highlights the names really well. So, Judges 6, starting at verse 1. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and Yahweh gave them into the hand of the Midianites for 7 years. The hand of the Midianites prevailed over Israel because of the presence of the Midianites. The Israelites made for themselves hiding places that were in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. So Midianites are killing the Israelites. They're terrified, so they hide. Verse 3. And whenever Israel sowed seed, the Midianites, Amalekites, and the people of the east would come up against them. So this coalition of tribes start ganging up against Israel and just ruining their crops. And they would camp against them and destroy the produce of the land as far as Gaza. They left no produce in Israel, or sheep, or ox, or donkey. Now, going as far as Gaza essentially means they had covered the grain belt from the central highlands to the coastal corridor, which was Israel's breadbasket. And by killing out the ox and the donkey, Israel don't have a way of mass-producing food because, the ox and the donkey are the ancient form of tractor. Verse 5. For they, their livestock, and their tents would come up like a great number of locusts. They and their camels could not be counted. They came into the land and devoured it. So the Midianite strategy was not to attack the cities, the towns, where they could be fortified, but to attack the means of production. Hordes would come in, strip the fields, leave Israel empty. So if you cut off their food supply to Israel, they can be starved out of the land. Verse 6. This is going on for 7 years. Israel was very poor because of the presence of the Midianites, and the Israelites cried out to Yahweh. So all of this meant everyone's completely impoverished and desperate. 7 years of everything getting worse and worse and worse, and finally the people are so desperate they actually turn back to Yahweh and cry out for his help. Verse 7. When the Israelites cried out to Yahweh on account of the Midianites, Yahweh sent a prophet to the Israelites, and he said to them, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt. I brought you from the house of slavery. I delivered you from the hand of Egypt and from the hand of all your oppressors, and drove them out from before you. And I gave you their land. And I said to you, I am Yahweh your God. Do not fear the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But you have not listened to my voice. I wish I had 4 hours to go through all the kind of the meta-narrative and the things that are going on in Joshua Judges. We just do not have the time. There's so many interesting connections. But the point is, God reminds Israel of their vows to this covenant. The reason why they're going through, the things are just so bad right now, is because they didn't listen to him, which is, a pretty classic marriage move. You listening to me? Did you listen to my words? So, verse 11. The angel of Yahweh came and sat under a rock, under the oak that was at Orpah, I don't know how to say that word, that came and belongs to Jehoash the Abiezrite, and Gideon, his son, was threshing wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. So we get to Gideon. He's hiding in a winepress, and now we know why. He has somehow managed to grow some food, and he's trying to process it in secret so his family won't starve. Now, the angel of the Lord is sitting under an oak tree, and angels in the Bible, they don't normally sit. Through the Bible, they're normally standing. But this one is sitting calmly. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him, and he said to him, Yahweh is with you, you mighty warrior. And the angel describes Gideon according to his calling, not according to his behavior. So verse 13, Gideon said to him, Excuse me, my lord. I'm going to pause right here. So an angel's appeared to you, and Gideon seems fairly unbothered. He calls him my lord, which is the polite term of respect, not the divine name. But this is just not an ordinary angel. This is the angel of Yahweh. Often when the angel of Yahweh appears, he often looks like a traveler. And so this is a pattern across the Hebrew Bible. The angel of Yahweh appears, they speak for Yahweh. Often it's only afterwards the person realizes it was God. Then sheer terror ensues because no one can see God and live, which is in Exodus 33. And then God, or the angel, reassures them and tells them not to be afraid. So that's the rough pattern, and kind of some kind of that version of the pattern happens with Hagar and Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Balaam, and Gideon, and others. So they're known as this theophany, because God uses these sneaky encounters to slip in undetected before powerfully revealing something new about who he is. And what is Gideon's response at this point? Well, he moves right past it. Gideon can't receive it, So he starts to object. Verse 13. If Yahweh is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, did not Yahweh bring you up from Egypt? But now Yahweh has forsaken us. He has given us into the palm of Midian. He's saying, yeah, okay, if God's with us, then why has all this bad stuff happened? And we all ask that question at some point in our lives, don't we? Why? If God is with us, why did this happen? 7 years of national oppression, 7 years of raids, a nation collapsed into poverty, and Gideon's trying to survive, and trauma is controlling his mind. Mighty warrior, excuse me, do you see what's going on around here? Politely. Verse 14. And Yahweh turned to him and said, actually, I've got to pause here again. Sorry, we didn't get very far. Quick question. Do you remember who was just speaking a moment ago? Was it Yahweh or was it the angel of Yahweh? Oh, suddenly now Yahweh's turned to him and said, well, this is very weird. So which is it, Yahweh or the angel of Yahweh? We seem to have this visible form of God, a person who's speaking for God, but also as God. Very interesting. I wonder who that could be. All right, 14. Go in this your strength, and you will deliver Israel from the palm of Midian. Did I not send you? And that question there is the whole point. Did I not send you? It gets right down to the question of trust. Do you trust me? So verse 15, he says to him, excuse me, my Lord. How will I deliver Israel? Look, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the youngest in my father's house. And Gideon's mind cannot comprehend what God is saying. They are weak, he is young, and he has internalized his helplessness. His heart is being defeated already. This is his only experience. So God pushes back. And Yahweh said to him, verse 16, but I will be with you, and you will defeat Midian as if they are one man. This is the third time the writer has said, and Yahweh. Do you notice how patient and encouraging Yahweh is being to Gideon? It reminds me of this passage in Isaiah, but it's quoted by Matthew in his gospel. He says, a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. Verse 17. And he said to him, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, show me a sign that is you speaking with me. Up to this point, it is unclear whether Gideon perceived this visitor as a man, a prophet, or an angel. But now at this point, Gideon is starting to open himself up just to follow his curiosity a little bit. What if this man is more than meets the eye? Verse 18. Please do not depart from here until I come back to you and bring out my gift and set it before you. And he said, I will stay until you return. So Gideon is very skeptical. He can't trust that any word of this kind of nice word of salvation about him is really from God. It just might sound a bit too good to be true. So he's like, let's test this. Sweet words, maybe just don't trust them at face value. I mean, if it's a lie, everything would be over. So it's the thing about trauma. Your body remembers the pain and wants you to protect you from being hurt again. So you just can't accept just people saying nice things to you, nice encouraging things. You know, in church, people give you a word from God and say, this is about you, and it's from God. And you go, I don't know, I've been through a lot of stuff, and that really hasn't been the case. So if you've been hopeless for so long, why trust it? You can't. If you're haunted by the past, I'm sorry, but these so-called promises could just be empty words. And when you're trying to survive, there is no place for being naive. I think with a lot of these characters, especially the ones we're quite familiar with, we can often read a story like this and see them as two-dimensional characters, like, well, Gideon's just a scaredy cat, he just needs to believe God. And some people say, yeah, okay, but Gideon's not a good example of faith. And I can understand where they're coming from. Putting God to the test is not necessarily a good thing. Jesus says a wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign. It's kind of that heart attitude of saying, yeah, prove it. That's cynicism. But let's remember, 7 years at war, terrorized by surrounding tribes, trying to survive, desperately hungry, hiding so he can make some food for his family so they don't starve. And his responses show he's absolutely no confidence in himself, none. So nation is in ruin, no king, no central leadership, no standing army, no protection from violent tribes. Everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes, so no one's really following faithful God. His dad is got idols to Baal anyway, so he's not really following Yahweh. His clan is weak, and he believes God, but he's looking at everything and going, everything I see is God has abandoned us. He's given up on us. And this guy he's never met shows up and says, you've got this, buddy. I got a plan for you. You're going to save the day. And he's like, surely you don't mean me. His mind is ruled by defeat. There's no room in his heart to trust the Lord. But he says, well, okay, I don't know about this, but what if? Now, my life group encouraged me this week to add a little silliness to my message. So it's time for a tenuous link. So remember the tree, the unassuming guide with a message, the stressed out and anxious protagonist who doesn't know where he is, but he's about to get a message from his Father in heaven about who he really is and his calling. Now go with me here. Can you roll the clip?
Asante sana, squash banana,
Come on, will you cut it out?
Can't cut it out. It'll go right back.
Creepy little monkey. Will you stop following me? Who are you?
The question is, who are you?
I thought I knew. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, I know who you are. Shh, come here. It's a secret. Asante sana, squash banana,
Enough already. What is that supposed to mean, anyway?
It means you're a baboon, and I'm not.
I think you're a little confused.
Wrong. I'm not the one who's confused. You don't even know who you are.
Oh, and I suppose you know.
Sure do. You're Mufasa's boy. Bye.
Hey, wait!
So I love that movie. If you don't know how the rest of the scene goes, go home, watch the movie. You could probably just leave right now. It would be worth it. One of the greatest movies ever made, and it'll speak to you. So let's get back to Gideon, verse 19. All right, verse 19. And Gideon went and prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from an ephah of flour. He put meat in the basket and put broth he put in a pot. And he brought them back to him under the oak and presented them. The angel of Elohim said to him, take the meat and the unleavened cakes and put them on this rock. Pour the broth over it. And he did so. Verse 21. Then the angel of Yahweh said, Then the angel of Yahweh reached out the tip of his staff that was in his hand, and he touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and fire went up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. And the angel of Yahweh went forth from his sight. And Gideon realized that he was the angel of Yahweh. And Gideon said, O my Lord Yahweh, for now I have seen the angel of Yahweh face to face. And Yahweh said to him, Shalom be with you. Do not fear, you will not die. And Gideon built there an altar to Yahweh, and he called it Yahweh is Shalom. Amen. So Gideon takes this food, completely drenched in liquid broth, and the man with the pointy stick zaps it, and it bursts into flames, and it's cremated. This is a clear foreshadowing of what happens with Elijah later on, with the prophets of Baal, for those who don't know that story. And then poof, this guy just disappears, straight vanishes from sight. And that's where the point where Gideon is completely terrified. And then God says to him, Shalom be with you. And when you've been traumatized and broken, when you have lost trust that God has spoken to you, when you don't know if you can hope again because it sounds like empty words, God, in his kindness, gave Gideon a sign, something impossible that could make him believe again. But more than that, he gave him peace. He causes peace to be. So, but after this encounter, Gideon goes on to deliver Israel from oppression through God's power. He lets peace into his heart, so his mind was won. And Hebrews in the New Testament talks about Gideon this way. Hebrews 11:32-34. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Now, the whole point of this story is less about Gideon and more about God's gracious, patient, and kind response to someone completely broken and scared. It means that it does not matter if you are feeling weak and timid and how small you feel and how broken you might through the things that you've been through, how hopeless things are. God can use you, and he can speak to you as he's calling you to be, not as you are. And he confirms his word with peace. So with shalom. Now, shalom, people can talk about peace as this idea as the absence of war. You'll hear friends and family say, I just want peace, meaning they're just tired of fighting. But shalom is a little bit different. Firstly, it's the Jewish aloha. Shalom for hello, shalom for goodbye. And that's a word that they use to greet each other today. But its biblical meaning means complete or whole. Imagine little bricks missing in a building or little holes in your life, things you lack. Shalom fills those missing pieces. It settles everything and completes it.